Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Dawn from Creative Appliques. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing down below and click the bell to be notified when I upload new content. In today's video, we're going to talk about puffy foam. I recently released a design that uses puffy foam. And there are some things to consider when you're using puffy foam in a design. So if this sounds intriguing to you, stay tuned. Okay, so I stitched out several different samples here of things that I wanted to talk about with you regarding foam and using foam fonts. So the first thing to consider is when you're using a font, make sure it's specifically digitized for foam. So you can see here the letter C was digitized specifically for foam. Okay, the letter A here was not. And so when you have a font that was not digitized for foam, you can see, let me tear away the rest of this foam, having a hard time because you can see that there is foam sticking out here and here. It's sticking out on all of the ends. So if you can see that, because when you digitize specifically for foam, it has to be digitized differently than a regular font. This is just done as a regular font, and that works fine when it's just stitching. But when you're trying to cover up all the ends of foam so that you don't have foam poking out here like you do on these ends, then you can see that this is not a font that was specifically digitized for foam. So that's the first thing to consider, is a font specifically digitized for sewing with foam. So the next thing to consider is it's not good to resize fonts that are digitized for foam. Not all software is going to handle it very well. This software, this was my digitizing software, so it handled it actually pretty well. And you can see there's still a little bit of poking out, but as a general rule, it's not good to resize because not all software is going to fill in all the stitches and accommodate for it, and you may have more gapping along the column. The next thing to consider is using the same color font as the thread you're using. So on this letter A, I specifically didn't use the same color foam as I did for the top. I used white foam with the red thread, and I did that specifically so you can see how it pokes out. Here on the letter C, the pink one here and the blue, I used a blue foam. You can see a little bit of poking out of the blue, but it's not as prominent and pronounced as with the A, okay? So that's one thing to consider when sewing with foam. You want to pick a foam that is the same color as the thread you're using, or as close as possible. So in this sample here, I did the same exact. The one here I'm trying to tear away, this is the foam from the craft store. So let me try to get close here and show you the difference. Okay, so the one on the left, this is the sulky foam, and I haven't cleaned it up yet. There is always going to be cleanup that is going to be needed with with foam, and we'll clean it up in a bit. But if you can see here, the one on the left is the sulky foam. That is the foam that's made specifically for embroidery. The one on the right is the foam that was purchased at the craft store. So that's the thinner stuff, the one that's not as dense as the sulky. So you can definitely see that there is a difference there in how easily it tore away. They're digitized the same exact. They're the same font. They're specifically for foam. So that's something else to consider. Another thing to consider as well is raising your presser foot so that when it's sewing, when the font is sewing for the foam part and you have the foam underneath the presser foot, that the presser foot is not pushing down so hard on the foam. So this is something that is going to be specific to your machine. If you have the possibility of raising the foot somewhat on the machine, then you might consider doing that to raise the presser foot up so it's not hitting down constantly and compressing on the foam. You're also going to want to remember to set it back to the original setting when you are done sewing with the foam. Another thing to consider too is to slow your machine down, slow the speed down so that the needle will have time to go from side to side to side on the satin stitches. Instead of going really, really fast, it'll have time to go and do each stitch up and around the foam. So slow the machine down. And finally, as I mentioned before, there is going to be some cleanup with working with foam. It's not always going to tear very easily.
We'll go over cleanup in another video. Find the link below.
So as you can see, I used, other than this one here, which I used the blue foam, all the rest of these I used white. These three here, I used the sulky foam. This one I used the craft foam, the cheap craft foam, and this one I used the sulky foam with in the blue. But all the rest, these four here are all white, and this is the blue one. So you can see there is still a little bit of cleanup, but not much. One other thing to also note about working with foam is the age of the foam. So an older foam is going to be more brittle, and when you go ahead and try to tear it away from the stitching, it may leave a lot more pokey sticking out than a newer, softer foam. So if you have some foam that's been hanging around for quite a while, it may not look very good, and it may require more cleanup than the newer foam. So working with foam is not something to be scared of. It's something that, it's new, and you can try it out. I have this font available now for sale and on the website. It's 1.5 inch only. But I'm hoping to add more sizes and more foam fonts to the website. I'd love to know in the comments if you've ever tried a foam font, and I would love to know how some of the tips and tricks and ideas and things that you've used with your font. I hope you found this information helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and click the bell to be notified when I upload new content. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Until next time, make your life creative.